Yo, what's good, people? So today I'm going to try to explain to you guys as best as I can how to use these blending modes that are over here in your layers panel inside of Photoshop. If you're a beginner or even a mid-level Photoshop user, you've probably either never seen these before, didn't know they existed, or you've just avoided them because they're pretty confusing. I mean, I know some professional graphic designers who still avoid these to this day just because they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And to tell you the truth, I barely understand what's happening behind the scenes because there's some algorithms in each one of these things that will blend the colors and light and dark tones of your foreground and background images in a different way. And when I work on a project and I want to blend one layer into the next, I honestly cycle through these one at a time and just pick whichever one looks the best. I like a couple of them, like multiply, overlay, screen. Like I know what's going to happen when I click on those. So if I'm looking for that specific effect, I'll use that. But if I'm just trying to play around and find a cool look, I'll just cycle through each one of these and choose the best one. So I have 3 photos here that we're going to use to demonstrate this process. The first one is here of Panther Springs in Mount Shasta, California. The second one is the Rio Grande Gorge in Taos, New Mexico. And this third is the Earthship Badlands, also in Taos, New Mexico. And on top of all 3 of those, I've put this color bar. Basically, I have the 4 primary colors: a black to white gradient, a 50% gray, a pure white, and a pure black. And now with that selected, let's see, we'll start with this Panther Springs Mount Shasta photo. I'm going to select my color tone. And let's start going through some of these blending effects, and we'll see how they affect the photo that's underneath them. So Dissolve not going to do anything for us in this situation, but these first 5, darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darker color, all 5 of those are going to darken the image behind this in a slightly different way. So here, if I put it on darken, you can see how each color reacts to the background photo. Here's the original photo. And you can see if I use black, it completely turns black. If I use white, you can see it didn't change anything. So basically all these, for darken, all these color tones, all these light tones that are here, like in the rocks, you can see them really well in the gray. They pretty much just disappear and turn to a gray. Whereas if I change to the next one, which is multiply, you'll see how the shades, the darker tones inside of the rocks multiply with the shade that's on top of them. So they multiply with this gray to make the background image darker. I know it's kind of confusing already, but once we cycle through them all, you'll see how drastically different they affect the image behind. So let's go down here to color burn. And this one, really, anything darker than the color that's on top is going to increase the contrast of the image in the background. So this is pure gray. So anything darker than pure gray is going to be increased in contrast. So it's going to turn a lot darker and the lights are going to get brighter. You can see not a whole lot is happening in the colors other than the color overlay. Nothing is happening in the white again. And everything in the black is turning to pure black. So if I go down to the linear burn, instead of increasing the contrast, this one decreases the brightness, which is just a slightly different function. Again, pretty much all of the colors stayed the same, and the white and black stayed the same as they were in the color burn. The only real differences were in the mid grays and this gradient that I have here. This last one, darker color, like it kind of says, is going to take whichever color in the foreground or background is darker, and it's going to use that. So we can see that all these greens in the background here are darker than this green that I'm using. So it's using the background image except for these light areas where it's going to let my actual green hue through. Whereas this blue is all darker technically than the green that it's overlaying, so it's only going to show up as blue. So let's go through those real quick one more time with the other photos and just see how they respond differently to different images. So with my Shift and plus button, that's my shortcut to just filter through these. So Shift plus is going to go from darken to multiply. Again, we'll go to color burn and then to linear burn and darker color. Now Shift minus will go back the other way. So linear burn, color burn, multiply, darker, and back to normal. Let's go through the last photo here. See how it looks. This is darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darker color. So this next little section here, the next 5 in the line are lighten, screen, color dodge, linear dodge, and lighter color, which are, I want to say they're going to do the opposite of these 5, but then it's not exactly the opposite. So we'll go through and actually show you guys how they're going to react. So you can see lighten, if it's in white, it's going to just turn pure white. If the overlay is black, nothing is going to happen, which basically is the opposite of darken. Everything black turns black. Everything under white stays the same as it was. So here's the lighten. We'll just filter through the next 4 of these. This is screen. So you can see how lighten and screen differ just a little bit, whereas in screen you can see more of this detail in the grass showing through. Whereas lighten, it really only takes those high, bright highlights and pulls them through. Color dodge. Sometimes this looks good, honestly. In this situation, it's pretty awful. Let's look at the other 2 photos. It's not that great in any of the 3. But honestly, in some situations, this does look really, really cool. Linear dodge is just slightly different. Here's the color dodge, and here's the linear dodge. And that's how it looks. There's color dodge, there's linear dodge, color dodge, linear dodge. And now here's lighter color. You can see whatever color is lighter, wherever there's shadows in the background image, it's just going to show me the color I have overlaid. It looks pretty bad in this situation. I don't really use this one a whole lot, but you know, sometimes if you're just shuffling through each one of them, this one's going to look really cool. So let's go on to the next section, which is kind of, it doesn't exactly lighten and it doesn't really darken. It just kind of, it gives a very unique blend to the foreground and background layers that you're using. So let's put this in overlay. And I want to see how this differs from screen, because a lot of times if I'm trying to put something that has a dark, let's say I have a picture of the moon that's a bright moon against a very dark sky, I'll either put it here in screen or in overlay, because mostly it blends the darker colors on top into the background and lets the lighter colors show on top of the background image, which I guess sounds kind of confusing. I think I'm confusing myself a little bit, but overlay I use a lot, all the time. Overlay, multiply, and screen. I'd say I use probably the most often. Lighten and screen, I kind of bounce between those two a lot. But let's keep going with this and go sift through these next 6 things here and show you the difference between overlay, soft light. It's basically just a little bit less of a contrast to the overlay. If you're in soft light, you see a little bit more of the details. I think this one just reduces it bumps up the brightness, whereas this one increases the contrast again. Hard light, in some situations this will work, but I think because we're using such bright colors and there's no variation to them, we're not going to see a whole lot. Vivid light, you can see our whites are much brighter. It's a much more high contrast image than when using the hard light overlay. Linear light looks a little similar to the hard light, but it's slightly different. And the pin light, I honestly almost never use this function. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. I just know a lot of times it doesn't look very good. Same with this hard mix. I almost never find a use for this one, but I mean, if you're good with this stuff and you know what's happening in the hard mix, you're probably not watching this tutorial because you know it already, but let us know. Leave a comment in the video and let us know what exactly is happening in this hard mix. The next section here is kind of it flips it inverts your colors almost. Like we'll see right here, if I use difference, it pretty much inverts my whole color chart. And it's like if you were cross-processing some film. Like if I don't know if any of you know how to do that or what that process is like, but basically it reverses your color wheel, and as you can see here, you know, your tones don't show up the way you thought they would. Exclusion, it looks like it will just exclude all the gray tones, all the mid-tones. Subtract and divide. So let's see what they look like on this. Subtract, divide, exclusion, difference. And now we're on to the last section here, which really, this one is going to blend things based on their color or their brightness value. So this one here is going to use this one hue is going to use the colors that are on the top layer and only show those as the color tones in the bottom photo. You can see kind of well here. And you can tell how our blacks, whites, and grays are doing nothing over here because there's no hue for them to give to the bottom layer. Only our colored layers are giving their hue to the photo behind them. Saturation, because all of these colors are saturated the same amount and all these black, white, and gray values are saturated the same amount, it's not going to do anything for us. But if you, let's say you had like a baby blue over here that went to a dark blue over here, you're going to see a variation across the screen based on how saturated that blue color is. Color is pretty similar to hue, except you can see how hue kind of blends into the grayscale in the background a little bit better, whereas this color just gives it a hard one color overlay. Luminosity, I kind of have no idea what's going on here. I don't tend to use this one a whole lot. it looks pretty awful on all three of these images, I guess. So again, if anybody knows what this divide does or what this luminosity does, please let us know, because like I said, even though I've been doing this for a long time and I kind of know what some of them do, whenever I'm using these functions, I really just shuffle through each one and I see which one looks the best. So like my method would be click here on this overlay, hit shift and plus, and just start going to see what looks good. You know? So I hope that helps you guys out a little bit. In my future tutorials, I'm going to be using this function a whole lot. So even though those will turn out better and like give you a better product, this is just kind of trying to explain the theory of everything behind what's happening. So when I do start using those functions in the future, you're not scared off by them and you're full force ready to go and just start experimenting. I'd encourage you to just pull up a couple photos, put them on 2 or 3 different layers, and start just changing just change this blend mode for each one of them and see what happens. See what kind of cool effects you can get. If you can find like a picture of smoke or something like that. A lot of times if you just Google search stock photo smoke, you'll find an image of a smoke stream on a black background. And if you bring that into a separate layer on top of an image and just put it into overlay, sometimes screen, sometimes overlay, you'll basically have the smoke covering whatever that image is underneath without being able to see the black background. So I know that's really confusing, but I hope it helps you guys out at least a little bit. Really just start playing around with it to get a more comfortable feel on what's happening. So thanks a ton for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. And keep an eye out, man. Peace.